Hey lovelies, so today we're studying the book of Proverbs, chapter 5, and it talks mainly about adultery. Now, the first part of this chapter, we see that the father is calling out his son to obey his instructions, to bind it in his heart and around his neck because it will serve as a guide. And we covered some of this in our yesterday's chapter 4, how wisdom is meant to be lived. And the only way that we can live by wisdom is living wisdom in our hearts. So we see that the Father says, pay attention to my wisdom. Wisdom is important as a believer because it guides us, it protects us, it prevents us from going down a path that is not the intention of God for our lives. Okay, so we see the Father call out to the Son. He says, pay attention to my wisdom, lend your ears to my understanding that you may preserve discretion. And then he goes on further to talk about the immoral woman and how she is very charming and it is easy for her to grab the attention of a young man. But the most important thing is that you have wisdom because wisdom will protect you from the snares of an immoral woman. The chapter then goes on to talk about the consequences of sexual immorality, the consequences of mingling with the immoral woman. One of the highlights of this chapter is how it says that sin cannot be avoided. So we cannot avoid sin, but at all cost, there are certain sins that we should run from. That's why the Bible literally talks about fleeing when it comes to lust. It is the same theme that I see here in chapter 5, where it mentions that a man should avoid sexual, not just a man, but both men and women. But as Christians, we are to avoid sexual immorality and adultery because it will cost us severely. So things like your soul, it says that it will lead you to death. Your soul will cry out in misery. It will also affect your finance. There's a certain chapter that says that all your labor go to the house of a foreigner when you engage in sexual immorality or adultery. Now, after listing out some of the consequences of sexual immorality, we see that in the next text, Solomon, who is the writer of Proverbs, calls us Christians to rejoice with the wife of our youth, which is very interesting considering he had many concubines, right? So we see that sex within the confines of marriage is the will of God for us. And as Christians, we need to walk in the will of God for our lives. One man, one woman together in marriage. This is the will of God. And don't let people tell you otherwise. Don't let people tell you otherwise. One thing I'm seeing with social media these days, and even with men in conversations I have, is this ideology that one man, one woman is not an ideal thing. Because when you look at nature, the dogs have sex with whoever they want, the lions, and so it's the same for men. Men don't have it in their nature to be in a marriage with one woman. No. The will of God, as said in the Bible, is one man and one woman together in holy matrimony. Why would you be enraptured with an immoral woman? So we see that in Proverbs 5, we are called to live a life of sexual morality in accordance to the will of God because that matters to God. Sex is a covenant that should be had between a man and a woman and God. So I hope this blessed you. Have a lovely rest of your day. Goodbye.